I was sitting in the driveway with the engine off, just staring at the faint blue glow coming from our living room window. Inside, I knew they were in there, her and her mother, talking again in that language I'd never been allowed to understand. They always did that. Every time her mom came over, they would switch, like flipping a switch from public to private. But this wasn't some cultural pride thing. This was concealment. I knew it in my gut. They spoke in riddles when I was in the room. Whispered words, then awkward silences. Laughter that stopped just a second too late when I stepped in. Her mom would glance at me like I was the houseplant, there but irrelevant. And my wife, she'd just say, "We're just catching up. Don't look so suspicious." I wasn't suspicious. Not until I started noticing the patterns. The way they'd suddenly shut down if I walked in holding my phone. The way her mother, always sweet and syrupy with her greetings, would tighten her jaw when I offered to drive her home. One night, as I walked into the kitchen, I heard her mother say something fast, almost like a hiss, followed by my wife responding with a short, cold yes. "I told you." Then silence. I stood there by the doorframe. My wife turned around like I'd walked in on her in the shower. "We're just talking about my cousin's baby," she said, except she didn't smile. She looked guilty, not panicked, guilty. That night, I went on eBay and bought a cheap digital voice recorder. I didn't even know why I did it. Just something pulled me there. I stuck it behind the vase in the living room, right where they usually sat for their coffee and catching up. I left it there for 3 days. Then, on the third day, they sat down again. I was at work, left the house like usual, except I parked 2 streets over, walked back, and sat in the alley beside our fence, headphones in, linked to the recorder's Bluetooth. I felt insane, like some deranged spy, but something told me that this wasn't just in my head anymore. What I heard made my skin feel electric. The mom started first. Her voice was lower than usual, stern, commanding. My wife responded in a clipped, angry tone. I couldn't understand the words, but the vibe, it was not casual. Then it shifted. A few minutes in, my wife suddenly said something in English. It was the only English word in the entire exchange. "His name. My name." She said it like a curse. And her mom laughed. They said more. I caught another English phrase, half muttered. "He still thinks I'm working late. He actually bought it." I froze. My blood pressure surged so fast my ears started ringing. The mother said something, and my wife burst into laughter. Loud, vicious, and unapologetic. It was the kind of laughter that doesn't come from amusement. Comes from control, from power, from the thrill of knowing you've gotten away with something again and again. I didn't breathe for a full minute. Then I stood up and walked into my own house. She was still sitting there when I opened the door. Her mother turned pale, and for the first time in years, she looked directly at me. I didn't say anything, just walked past, pulled the vase from the shelf, and held up the recorder. Her face cracked. Not a huge reaction. Not tears. Not anger. Just this tiny twitch in her left cheek. Like I'd just ruined the punchline to a joke she'd been planning all week. Then she said, in the calmest voice imaginable, "That's illegal. Not what's that. Not why are you spying on me. Not, there's a misunderstanding. Just a warning. Legal consequences." And in that moment, I realized something that cut deeper than anything I could have imagined. She wasn't scared. She was ready, and I had no idea what was coming next. She stood up slowly, like I was some uninvited guest in her apartment and not the man who paid the mortgage. Her mother didn't move, just sat there with that same smug, ancient calm, like she'd watched 1,000 men walk into 1,000 traps. My wife didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch. Her eyes scanned the recorder in my hand like it was a fly she could swat. "So," she said, dragging the word out like she was tasting it, "this is what we're doing now?" I didn't answer. I just looked at her, and she hated that. My silence used to make her nervous. Now it made her angry. "Seriously, Brian?" she went on, stepping closer. "You're creeping around the house, recording conversations you don't even understand? Do you realize how that makes you look?" I finally spoke. "I heard my name. You said I bought something. What was I buying, exactly?" Her face didn't twitch. Not even an eye roll. Just flat, cold amusement. Context matters. You're good at skipping it when it suits you. I turned to her mother. Maybe she'll explain it. since she's clearly part of it. Her mother responded in Albanian, eyes locked on mine, tone slow and deliberate. My wife gave a short, sharp laugh. She says you're embarrassing yourself. The venom hit fast and deep. I took a step back, the recorder still in my hand. You're cheating on me. Her head tilted slightly. No denial. No gasp. Just calculation. Is that what you heard on that little device? Because if you're going to accuse me of something serious, you might want more than edited audio and a bruised ego. Don't play this, I snapped. Don't try to pivot like you always do. I heard the laughter. I heard the lies. And you said my name like I was a joke to you. Her eyes finally lit up. Not with guilt. Not with fear. With defiance. You want to know the truth? She asked, her voice rising slightly. Fine. You were a placeholder. A box I checked so I wouldn't have to explain myself at family events. You were boring. Predictable. Safe. My mother saw it before I did. You think being a good guy is enough? It's not. You don't see me. You never have. Felt like my lungs were filling with cement. So who sees you? The question came out before I could stop it. That's when she smiled. She turned, walked to her purse, and pulled out her phone. With a few taps, she turned the screen toward me. A message thread. A name I didn't recognize. A photo I can't unsee. Her in a booth, eyes soft, lips parted, hand across the table touching someone else's. She said one word. Him. I took a step back. My legs were still working. That surprised me. Her mother finally stood. She muttered something in Albanian, shook her head, and walked toward the door. She didn't even look at me as she left. Like I wasn't part of the equation anymore. Like I never had been. I stood there, watching my wife scroll back through the messages like she was bored. Like I was a lecture she couldn't wait to skip. You're not even sorry, I said quietly. She looked up. No, I'm not. And for a moment, the air felt thinner. Like the whole world had shifted 1 inch to the left and nothing lined up anymore. Then I guess we're done, I said, not knowing if I meant the marriage, the conversation, or something else entirely. She shrugged. Guess so. And that was the end of the life I thought I had. But not the end of the story. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't slam any doors. I just left. Walked out of my own house without even my wallet. I needed distance. But not the kind that miles give you. The kind you feel in your spine when everything safe becomes hostile. I got in my car, turned the key, and sat there staring at the dashboard while my mind rewound every moment of the last year, like it was a crime scene I'd slept through. This wasn't a sudden affair. This was infrastructure. A machine. She'd built something behind my back while smiling in my face. Not just the cheating, the performance, the manipulation, the subtle rewrites of our history. And I realized then, what had felt like drifting apart wasn't just emotional erosion. It was sabotage. I didn't sleep that night. I drove around for hours, then ended up in a 24-hour diner on the edge of town where nobody knew me. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and tried to figure out if I was furious, heartbroken, or just numb. By morning, I was back at the house. I didn't go inside. I parked down the block and waited. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if he came out. The guy from the photo. Maybe I wanted to catch her slipping, show up like a ghost and rip the curtains off the life she was living when I wasn't watching. At 10:42 a.m., a car pulled up. Not a stranger's. Her boss, David. I recognized the car instantly. She'd pointed it out to me before, laughed about how he still drove a manual. Midlife crisis, she'd said. He shifts more than he works. I watched him walk up to our front door and knock like he'd done it 100 times before. She opened it fast. Not like a friend or a colleague or even someone covering up. Like someone expecting him. No hesitation. She was in leggings and a shirt I bought her last Christmas. He stepped inside. She didn't even look down the street. I waited 43 minutes before I knocked. This time, she hesitated. She opened the door with her face already twisted in annoyance. What do you want now? David appeared behind her, confused, holding a mug from our cabinet. I looked straight at him. You sleep with your employees often? Or am I just the special case? His face dropped like he'd swallowed a brick. She didn't flinch. She just said, "Get off the porch." David mumbled something, tried to leave, but I stepped aside. No, stay. You two look comfortable. She snapped. What are you doing, Brian? Is this your plan? Humiliate me in front of people who actually give a damn about me. I'm humiliating you? I laughed, a bitter, dry sound I didn't recognize as my own. You cheated on me, lied about work, mocked me to your mother, and now you're standing in our home with your boss, and I'm the one crossing the line? David muttered. I didn't know. She's married, I said, cutting him off. You knew. He left, didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. She stood there in the doorway, still blocking it like she was guarding treasure. You got what you wanted. Now leave. And in that moment, I saw her completely for the first time. Not the woman I married. Not the woman I thought I could still reach. But the architect of a version of reality where I was never even in the blueprint. I walked away without another word. No closure. No final line. But I wasn't done. Because there were things she didn't know I had. And I wasn't about to let her walk away clean. I didn't go back to the house. I didn't answer her texts. There were only 3, and none of them asked if I was okay. The first was, you need to stop embarrassing both of us. The second, I'll be home late, don't be here. The third, grow up. She was still under the impression that I was broken. Still convinced that I'd spiral, plead, lose sleep over her like a fool in a movie. What she didn't know was that something inside me had changed the moment I saw her smirk while holding that phone. I wasn't the same man who brought her soup when she faked being sick or who waited for her outside her yoga class with her favorite iced tea. No, that man was dead. I went to my brother's place and told him everything. He's not the sentimental type. His response, burn it down legally. And that clicked something into place. First move, finances. I'd let her run the budget for years. She always insisted on it. Said it calmed her anxiety to have control. What she really wanted was to keep me blind. But what she never knew was that I'd started making copies of statements, account activity, even the separate card she thought I didn't know about. She'd opened it under her maiden name. Used it for hotel charges, dinner spots I'd never been invited to, and once, tickets for 2 to an event in another city the same weekend she told me she was visiting her aunt in Phoenix. Her aunt died 2 years ago. I compiled everything into a digital folder. Screenshots, recordings, logs, dates, voice memos. Labeled. Timestamped. I wasn't planning to make a scene. I was planning to make a case. Second move, the recorder. I played back the full audio of that last conversation. At minute 11:24, her mother said something in Albanian. I sent it to a friend of mine who's fluent. The translation? You should start putting things in your name. He's too passive to notice. She laughed, replied, he's a means to an end. That hit different. She wasn't just cheating. She was building a life without me on my back. Using me, calculated, cold. A chess match I hadn't even realized I was playing. Third move, legal consultation. I set a meeting with a divorce attorney the next day. Brought everything. Laid it all out on the table. The man barely blinked. You have leverage, he said. She's sloppy, arrogant. This can work to your favor. We drafted the beginning of a plan, not just to leave her, but to extract myself in a way that cut her off from everything she built with my support. The house? In my name. The car? My loan. Joint account? I'd already started the process of pulling my direct deposits out of it. Then came the wild card. That evening, as I left the attorney's office, I got a message from an unknown number. No words, just a video. It was her, my wife, sitting on a couch, laughing with a man whose face was half hidden. Not David, someone else. She leaned in, whispered something into his neck, then looked at the camera, smiled. I froze. There was no text attached, no threat, just the video. Whoever sent it knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't over. It was war now, and I'd just begun to sharpen the blade. I watched the video 3 times. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't. Who was filming? Why send it to me? Why now? It wasn't just proof. It was staged, intentional. Her smile wasn't casual, it was directed. Like she knew I'd see it. Like she wanted me to. I reverse traced the number through a burner lookup service. Nothing. Prepaid SIM, no metadata. But then I noticed something in the corner of the video. A reflection. A small sliver of glass, maybe from a picture frame or a mirror behind the camera. And in that reflection, a silhouette. I took a screenshot. Sent it to my friend Taylor. She works in video production and has an eye for detail like no one else. An hour later, she called me voice tense. That's not just anyone filming. That's her mom. I sat there stunned. This wasn't random. This was a performance. Project. A coordinated effort to humiliate me. But the question wasn't why. It was what were they trying to make me do? Because this wasn't just cheating anymore. This was psychological. I remembered what her mother said in the recording. About putting things in her name. About me being too passive. And it clicked. They weren't just preparing to leave. They were preparing to leave with everything. So I changed course. Instead of reacting, I started planting traps. I sent her a message. I'd like to talk. I've been thinking. Maybe we don't need to end things like this. She replied almost immediately. What do you mean? I answered, come to the house tonight. Alone. Let's figure this out. She agreed without hesitation. That told me everything. She thought she'd won. She walked into the living room like a woman collecting a victory, wearing the same smug look she wore in that video. No guilt, no shame, just cold, surgical control. You're finally seeing things clearly, she said, tossing her purse on the couch. I knew you'd come around. I didn't answer. I just gestured to the table. I'd set out a single sheet of paper, not divorce papers, not yet. Just a printed transcript of the voice recording. The English part. The part where she said I was a placeholder. A box to check. She glanced at it. Didn't flinch. Just rolled her eyes. Are we seriously still doing this? You said I was boring, I replied. A box you checked. She leaned back against the counter. And now look at you. Spying. Plotting. Maybe you weren't as dull as I thought. She said it like it was a compliment. Then she added, but let's be honest, you'll still come crawling back. Guys like you always do. You hate being alone more than you hate betrayal. That was when I pulled out the second document. Quietly, carefully, set it next to the first. A notarized affidavit transferring full ownership of the house into a trust. A move I'd made 3 days ago. One she had no clue about. She froze. What's this? It's me being passive, I said. Hope it suits me. Her eyes shifted. Not in panic. In calculation. Spinning possibilities. Running damage control in her head. You're bluffing. I handed her the original voice recorder. This doesn't feel like bluffing. She didn't take it. She just looked at me for a long time. And in that silence, I saw something I hadn't seen in her for months. Uncertainty. For the first time, the mask slipped. I've got more, I said calmly. You know I do. You think this is about heartbreak? This is about dignity. She laughed once, short and bitter. You think you're some mastermind now? No, I said. Just a man who finally stopped pretending you were someone worth protecting. And then I walked out of the house, left her standing there, staring at her own words printed in ink, with nothing to say for the first time since this all began. But the game wasn't over, because I still didn't know who the man in the video was, or what they were planning next. The next day, I got a call from an unknown number. I didn't pick up. Let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds of silence. Then a single sentence. She's not who you think she is. That was it. No name. No context. But it cracked open something inside me. Because the truth was, by now, I didn't think she was anyone. She was a mask. A performance. A chess player with too many queens on the board. But this sounded like someone who knew the whole script. I called the number back. Disconnected. That night I went digging. Not into her messages. She was too careful for that. But into the past. Her past. We'd met in 2018. She told me she'd moved here to start over. I never questioned it. Who questions the woman they fall in love with? But I should have. I pulled her old LinkedIn profile. She deleted it months ago, but I'd once sent it to a friend back when she was job hunting. I found the link in my email trash. Recovered it. The work history didn't match what she'd told me. She said she worked in PR. The profile listed a role in reputation management. I Googled the company, a firm that specialized in digital damage control, scrubbing online profiles, burying scandals, engineering narrative. It hit me like a fist. She didn't just lie to me. She was trained in lying. I dug further, found an archived employee blog post from her time there, Anonymous, but it was her writing style. The post told a story about turning leverage into loyalty, about how people will believe anything if you give them the right breadcrumbs, about how control isn't about domination. It's about directing what people think they already decided. I read it twice. Then I sat back and realized she had been crafting this from the beginning. Every confession, every emotional moment, every fight where she broke down crying. It wasn't instinct. It was theater. She studied me, found my blind spots, my weaknesses. She played the role of the vulnerable, misunderstood partner until she had what she needed. My trust, my resources, my silence. The man in the video, maybe he wasn't even the first. That made me think of the voice message again. She's not who you think she is. It wasn't a warning. It was a clue. I went back to the recording of the night she came to the house. Scrubbed through the background noise. There, faint, behind her voice, a click, like a camera shutter. A phone, not mine, hers. She recorded it. That whole conversation. She wanted me to think I was the one making moves, when in reality she'd baited me into revealing what I knew. Everything I said in that room, she documented it. For what? Leverage? Blackmail? No, something worse. Narrative. She was preparing to play the victim. The divorce would go public, to our circles at least, and she'd paint herself as the woman in danger. The wife recorded in secret, manipulated, gaslit, controlled by a man who couldn't handle a strong woman. And the worst part? It would work, because she'd already started telling that story. A friend texted me out of nowhere. Heard you've been acting out. You okay, man? I didn't reply. I didn't scream. I went quiet, because when you're at war with a liar trained in perception, the only weapon left is unpredictability. I wasn't going to fight her version of me. I was going to erase it. One fact at a time. 2 weeks. That's how long I said nothing. Not to her. Not to friends. Not to anyone who reached out with concern wrapped in condescension. People already had their versions of the story. I could feel it when I passed mutual friends in public. Tight-lipped nods. Eyes that didn't hold contact. Polite pity like I'd been the one who snapped. She was moving fast. Painting her narrative. I saw a post go up on her private account. One of those carefully vague, weaponized empathy posts. Sometimes people turn toxic when they feel you growing beyond their control. Protect your peace. With a photo of her smiling by a lake. Probably taken by the man from the video. It worked. Her likes surged. Supportive comments piled in. People reposted it, called her brave. It was almost impressive. She was building her defense in plain sight, all while dismantling mine from the inside. But I'd already started. I tracked down an old coworker of hers from the reputation firm. Someone she thought she'd burned the bridge with years ago. Turned out she hadn't. Just made him angry enough to remember. I met him for coffee under a fake name. He didn't know the full story, but he told me this. She was good, like scary good, but the kind of good that eventually gets messy. She lied for people with too much to hide, and one of those lies cost her a job. What kind of lie? I asked. He smiled over his cup. The kind that ruins people. The kind that's only a problem when someone like you refuses to shut up. That's when I asked him for a favor. Not for blackmail. Not for revenge. For documentation. He still had access to the internal archive. A snapshot of deleted client logs, email records, internal flags. Nothing I could use in court, but enough to build a picture. Enough to make her look like what she really was. Not a misunderstood woman, but a professional manipulator with a trail of scorched reputations behind her. Then came the lawyer. My attorney sent over a formal discovery request. Every communication she had with any man I suspected. She stalled. Claimed invasion of privacy. Tried to fight it. But the moment we presented the hotel receipts, the travel bookings under fake names, the overlapping work schedules, her legal team folded like damp paper. She tried to play the harassment card next. Said I was tracking her movements. Except I wasn't. I was tracking my accounts, my cards, and my property. And she had been using all of them without consent. It backfired. Hard. Then came the day I walked into mediation and saw her face for the first time since the night I exposed the trust paperwork. She looked different. Not unkempt. Not broken. Just off balance. The confidence was gone. The mask was cracked. And underneath, I saw someone realizing she was losing a game she thought was rigged in her favor. We didn't exchange a word at first. Just legal reps talking. Terms being read. But then, out of nowhere, she leaned in across the table, lowered her voice, and whispered, "Are you really this petty?" I stared at her. "Petty? I gave you a life. You tried to turn it into a script." She smiled, but it was hollow now. Tired. "You could have just let me go." I leaned closer. "You didn't want to be let go. You wanted to be chased. You wanted destruction. You're just upset I didn't hand you the matches." Her lawyer nudged her arm to pull her back. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't furious because I exposed her. She was furious because I didn't need her anymore. Not her approval, her story, or her attention. The moment I stepped out of the narrative she built, she lost control. And she couldn't stand it. But this war wasn't just about freedom anymore. It was about making sure she never did this to anyone else again. She filed a formal complaint 2 days later. Said I was emotionally manipulative. That I weaponized silence to control her. That I entrapped her into confessing. It was a desperate move, one last, flailing attempt to twist the chessboard now that every piece she'd moved had been turned against her. It didn't work. But it told me something critical. She wasn't playing to win anymore. She was playing to destroy what she couldn't keep. And that made her dangerous. I took the offensive quietly. Started with the trust fund she didn't know about. I'd created it months before everything exploded. Money from an old inheritance I never merged into our marriage finances. It sat untouched, invisible. It was mine, and now it was my shield. She couldn't touch it, couldn't claim it, couldn't even find it. Then I went after the credibility. I gathered everything. Her messages, the contradictory statements, the video she thought was a threat. It became my evidence. Because in it, she wasn't scared. She wasn't intimidated. She was gleeful, in control. That wasn't the face of a woman in fear. That was the face of a woman who believed she could burn a man alive and still be applauded for the warmth. Her attempt at a smear campaign started bleeding into her job. She didn't expect me to go near her workplace. I didn't. But someone else did, a contact I never named, who forwarded screenshots, emails, and one very important memo. Her using company time and equipment to send personal messages about me. About getting rid of me. About flipping the story before I could speak. She was asked to take a leave of absence. She posted a vague Instagram story the same night. Some people just can't handle a strong woman telling her truth. And that's when I dropped the final hammer. A detailed, chronological document outlining the entire timeline. Every lie, every receipt, every moment of calculated deceit was delivered to the mediator. My lawyer attached a letter requesting accelerated dissolution of assets, citing mental and financial abuse with supporting evidence. No threats, no screaming, just facts. Her lawyer tried to delay. Mine didn't blink. And when she finally showed up for the final round of negotiations, she looked like a shadow of the woman who once said I was too dull to notice her moves. She wore a smile, but it was brittle, forced. She kept checking her phone like she expected someone to come save her. No one did. She agreed to the terms. She surrendered the house. She forfeited any claim to future support. She asked for one thing, that I not ruin her name. I didn't promise her anything, because she didn't deserve protection. After the meeting, she caught me alone in the parking lot. Stepped in close, voice low. "You think you're safe now, don't you?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I was never unsafe. You were just loud enough to make me doubt it." She didn't answer. She just stared, like she didn't recognize me anymore. And that was the point. The man she lied to, gone. The man who handed her his trust, buried. What stood in front of her now was the aftermath. Clean, sharp, final. I walked away, not because it was over, but because I'd already won. And the silence she feared the most, mine, was the only sentence she'd be forced to live with. The silence didn't last long. Not because I broke it, but because she couldn't live inside it. A week after the dissolution was finalized, she started posting cryptic messages again. People who need to control the narrative are the ones most afraid of the truth. That sort of thing. Thinly veiled attempts to make herself the phoenix rising from the ashes. But the ashes were clean. I made sure of it. Everything had been stripped from the stage. The property, the finances, the lies she wrapped herself in like a second skin. There was nothing left to hide behind. No audience left to clap. She'd burned her bridges in every direction, thinking I'd be too proud to expose her. But the truth wasn't an act of revenge. It was the antidote to her performance. Still, there was one thing I hadn't solved: the man from the video. The one she smiled at like he was more than just a fling. Something about him didn't sit right. Not just because of what he was to her, but because of what he wasn't. He wasn't present anywhere. No tagged photos. No mutual follows. Not even a trace in old messages I'd recovered. Until I remembered something small, almost forgettable. Months ago, back when things were just starting to feel off, she mentioned someone from her gym. A trainer. She laughed about how he was weirdly intense, but harmless. I hadn't thought about it again until now. I checked the gym site, staff profiles. Nothing matched. So I dug deeper. Cross-referenced event photos from the gym's social media with her phone's photo backups, some of which had been saved in the cloud and never scrubbed. And there he was, in the background, always just out of focus. Never close, but always there. And then I found it. A single image from a holiday mixer at the gym. She's standing next to him, arm loosely around his waist, half her face blurred in motion, but his is clear. And behind them on the wall is a mirror. That same mirror. The one from the video. It was filmed at his apartment. Not some hotel. Not some random stop along her spiral. A place she'd clearly been before. Place she was comfortable. Place she stayed. I followed the thread to an old Reddit post on a private fitness forum. One where the same man had shared a photo of his home gym setup. Exact same wall. Same mirror. Same light fixture. His username? Throwaway, sure. But the caption? Finally upgraded the place. Got some help designing it from someone special. You know who you are. Dated 6 months before I found the recording. She hadn't just cheated. She'd helped build another life. One with custom lighting, coordinated throw pillows, and a whole damn second identity. That's when I realized. She never lied just for escape. She lied because it was her currency. Truth was never her reality. It was just something she borrowed from others to build a better fiction. And I had spent 5 years financing a woman who never existed outside of her own performance. It should have broken me. But instead, I felt something strange. Relief. Because finally every piece fit. Every suspicion. Every silence. Every laugh in a language I couldn't understand. She'd never hidden it because she thought I couldn't find out. She hid it because she thought I wouldn't. And she was wrong. You always imagine you'll fall apart at the end of something like this. You picture the lonely apartment, the cold dinners, the mirror that doesn't lie anymore. You brace for the breakdown, the spiral, the long drive to nowhere. But that didn't happen. What happened was nothing. No screaming. No tears. Just space. I moved into a smaller place. Clean, quiet, sunlit. No ghostly laughter in the walls. No sudden scent of someone else's perfume left to rot in the couch cushions. Just a bed, a desk, a fridge, and the kind of peace that doesn't ask questions. I changed my number, blocked her on every platform, told mutual friends, don't bring her up. If she tries to reach out, don't play messenger. Let her talk to herself. But the real final blow? She started trying to claw her way back. Not to me. No, to her image. People were pulling away. Not all at once, but enough that she felt it. Enough that her version of the story wasn't holding like it used to. Someone leaked pieces of what really happened. Not the full drop, just enough to make the cracks show. A few DMs. Screenshots. Timeline inconsistencies. She tried spinning it. Claimed I was launching a smear campaign. That I'd twisted her words and retaliated because I was fragile. It didn't work. Not because I fought harder, but because I didn't fight at all. I didn't respond, didn't post, didn't correct anyone. I disappeared. And without my energy feeding her story, she lost momentum. People saw it. They always do eventually. They saw the deflection, the evasions, the way she turned every question into an accusation, the way no one in her life lasted longer than a few months. She moved cities 3 months after the settlement. Started over again, probably under some new name or new angle. Told someone else a new version of the truth. Maybe this time she's the survivor of a controlling marriage, or a trauma bond, or something else she learned on the internet. I don't care. Let the next poor fool believe he's the exception. Because I know now I was never the target. I was the vessel. She needed someone to pour her fiction into, someone stable enough to give her chaos structure, someone quiet enough to be recast as the villain later. And when she couldn't control me anymore, she tried to erase me. But here's the part she didn't calculate. I didn't want to be remembered. I wanted clarity. And I got it. I learned that love isn't loyalty. It's truth. And if someone can't speak yours back to you in your own language, your real language, they don't love you. They just need an audience. So if you're reading this, and you think you're crazy for noticing the whispers, the unexplained absences, the sudden shifts in mood, you're not. You're the only one still awake. Record the conversation. Ask the hard question. Stand still long enough and they'll tell on themselves. They always do. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm clear. And nothing she ever said, no laugh in a language I don't speak, no message sent from a burner phone, no word she twisted into victimhood, can change that. Let her lie. Let her rewrite. Let her vanish. I'm free. And she'll never understand what that means.